I have an honor and a pleasure to give you a British researcher, lecturer, linguist, historian, a spectacular author specializing in modern Eastern Europe, particularly Russia, under Vladimir Putin's dictatorship, doctor in philosophy by Oxford University, Dr. Jade Mc.Glynn. Good afternoon, ma'am. Hello.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.
The pleasure is all mine, and thank you for finding time and joining us. Well, let's go straight forward to questions. In 2020, you obtained your Doctor of Philosophy in Oxford for your dissertation, Relieving the Past, How the Russian Government and Media Use History to Frame the Present. And how exactly do they do it?
They have a variety of methods, but in particular, there's a very constant use of historical analogies and a very constant way to make the past seem as if it's threatened. So I don't need to explain to Ukrainians, for example, the different ways that, at the very highest levels of the Kremlin, there have been efforts such as the 2021 National Security Strategy, such as, of course, Putin's infamous essay on the historical unity of Russians and Ukrainians, to present the past as something that needs to be protected, as something that there is just one truth. And of course, it's the Russian version of the truth in their mind, and that it's under deep threat and that this causes an existential struggle or problem for Russians. So there's this constant introduction of history and historical narratives that need to be defended, including militarily, right. Even though these historical narratives are just myths.
Propaganda. Is that the one way to say it?
Yeah, propaganda is another perfect way of saying it.
All right, okay, well, let me try to smoothly slide to another question. Can we say that the DPRK cannon fodder in Ukraine is Putin's provocation of the West? And provocation has, well, at least so far, going well, as the West is either too timid or too stupid to act decisively.
Mm-hmm. Yes, I almost don't even think it's a provocation. I think it's a laughing in the West's face. And like you say, I think the West is either too stupid or too timid or probably both to understand what is going on. But it's also, I think, again, the result of Russian propaganda in the West this time. So the constant iteration, that Russia would use nuclear weapons, that, if you help Ukraine, for example, by giving them approval to use Storm Shadow missiles.
Right.
Then that will lead to a dangerous escalation. And I think we see the sheer mockery with which Russia treats the West by the fact that they threaten that that's an escalation. But of course, sending thousands of North Korean troops is not.
Well, sheer mockery, I like the way you put it. Russians are obviously using the territory of the occupied Zaporizhzhia nuclear power plant to deploy more military personnel and ammunition and explosives recently. Very concerning, if you ask me, to put it mildly. So let's speculate. What's to expect, you think, Doctor?
It's funny because I was in Zaporizhzhia about 2 weeks ago, and it was thankfully a very quiet day then. But I was there to talk about what's happening on the occupied parts of Zaporizhzhia region, to talk with people, with experts there who are involved with that process and with trying to maintain links to the resistance there. And it was sort of... it followed, I suppose, the increase, or it came alongside the increase in aerial bombs being used against the city of Zaporizhzhia. And there's been a lot of talk also here in the West that the Russians were going to try to basically start another kind of line of offensive in the Zaporizhzhia direction. It seems as if they're struggling with that, partly because a miracle has happened and Russian soldiers appear to be tiring of being forced into so-called meat storms or human waves in the English term. But unfortunately, this is why the importance of Russia being able to bring North Korean soldiers, it does still have effect, because Russia is, of course, going back to its traditional way of warfighting, of just attrition and just throwing men at the problem. And I think anybody who can look at a map can work out that's obviously going to be very, very difficult for Ukrainians.
Obviously. And also, do you, Doctor, personally believe that with this war of attrition now, Ukraine will be invited to NATO in, say, I don't know, 3 years from now?
I don't know, to be honest. Of course, I think it should be invited
It
to
should
NATO.
be,
I think it
right.
should have been invited to NATO already. And I think if this issue had been resolved sooner, there's every chance that this big war since 2022 wouldn't be happening. So it's a tragedy. However, in terms of what happens now, I think it's very difficult to say because if we're honest, a NATO invitation depends on support from the US, and that support isn't there right now. And I'm not sure with either of the two current presidential candidates it's going to become more likely. So I think the problem is an American one. I think there are other options. So, for example, the JEF, which is a sort of subset. It's kind of now become a subset of NATO. I think there are other options, but I think that realistically, I'm not sure to what extent, and we'll only know properly after the results of next week's elections in the US are clear. I'm not sure to what extent not just Ukraine, but all of Europe has to contend with a post-NATO as we knew it
Yeah, well, it makes
era.
two of us, right?
Yeah.
Not sure, absolutely. Last question for tonight. Say Putin dies, amen to that, tomorrow. Do you really believe that Russian ways, let's put it that way, Russian ways will change significantly?
No, I don't. I think that the best thing that could be hoped for would be a sort of a change to a more technocratic and a more technocratic individual. I think there will be a change, but I think that the most likely, we've all seen that the most likely threat to Putin has come from the extreme nationalist wing. It's certainly not come from the so-called liberal opposition or the sort of dissidents. And there's every reason to think that that's where any future political energy will come from, because they're the only individuals with the scope to mobilize with support among the elites. And we know that's an important part in any regime transition. So I doubt that there will be a huge change either way. But if there is a change, then I think it will probably be, it's much more likely to be for the worse than for the better, unfortunately. I wish I had a different answer.
I couldn't agree more. And thank you so much for this amazing conversation and for your time, for expertise, for shedding at least some light onto us tonight in easy terms. I hope we talk soon.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you so very much. Goodbye. A British researcher, lecturer, linguist, a historian, and an author specialising in particularly Russia under Putin's usurped reign, doctor in philosophy by Oxford University, Dr. Jade Mc.Glynn, was at UATV English studio with us tonight.